AIO pumps can be temperamental. Even when they work, they either click, hum, buzz, and that is if they work consistently at all. Then there's the issue of those stock fans, which can be hit or miss. This new one hits that sweet spot. Welcome to Machines and More. Today we're going to look at a really neat new AIO. Cooler Master's 3rd generation pumps have been impressive, and because of that, the PL240 Illusion has been one of my favorite units since its release earlier this year. And that pump is just so quiet even at 100%. But aesthetics were prioritized in that unit, and the nice looking master fan halos were employed instead of a more static pressure oriented model, which would be ideal for a radiator. And I've always just used that unit by swapping in higher performance fans. Today, Cooler Master is announcing the PL240 Flux and PL360 Flux AIOs, and these are fully featured units which combine that high-performance pump design, new PL Flux fans, and DRGB for aesthetics, all in a compact package. Now, before we begin the review, I did want to thank Cooler Master for providing this review unit today. The unit was provided free of charge to the channel for the purpose of evaluation and making this video, but as with all product reviews you'll see on this channel, they're never sponsored by the manufacturer, and you can always expect an honest evaluation. So out of the box you get this compact pump, and this one features a really low profile 40mm height, and it's got an enlarged cold plate surface which is fully compatible with the larger LGA 1700 CPU surface area. Now this pump features a dual chamber design and it spins up to a max of 3300 RPM. Cooler Master claims that this allows heat spots to be specifically targeted, and we'll see just how well that works shortly. Now this is connected with pretty substantial braided tubing. This tubing is thicker than the tubing on most AIOs, and this measures in at around 330mm from fitting to fitting. And that connects the whole pump to the radiator, which is 27mm thick. This is nice and compact with a typical fin density for an AIO radiator. And the pump head does have these nice 90-degree rotary fittings, which is especially helpful for builds where clearance is tight or a specific tube orientation is desired, such as in sandwich-style SFF cases. And now, these are the new Flux fans, and they remind me a lot of the Masterfan SF120s that I tested earlier in the year. These fan blades are interconnected for stability, just like the design on the P12 ARGB, and the inner frame of the fan is chamfered, and that is what Cooler Master claims increases airflow. And that does seem like that would make some sense, since the bevel would reduce the level of turbulence coming from this hard angle here. These fans go up to 2300 RPM plus or minus 10%, and they look really nice with these translucent white blades. One positive change here, the RGB adapter or cable that was used on some other CM units. That is gone in favor of a simple 3-pin DRGB cable here. The pump and the two fans, they simply connect to an included 3-pin splitter cable, and I really like this. That proprietary cable was a little bit annoying. This pump will just need to connect to a header on your board. There's no data or power cables to mess with. It's fairly low wattage at around 6 watts, and the fans just connect via an included splitter back to a 4-pin fan header. They also include these really nice clips so that your RGB connection stays in place securely. Now, if you don't have a compatible motherboard, there is an included RGB controller, SATA powered, and that will connect to an internal USB 2.0 header. Now that does result in more cabling, but hopefully you're using it directly connected to your motherboard, such that you can take advantage of your motherboard's RGB software, as well as the wide variety of lighting effects that those typically come with. One thing I've always liked about CM's units is that they come with these really nice thumb screws for attaching fans, and that makes the process of attaching fans tool-free. Installation is straightforward. There's 2 Intel backplates included. One is for Alder Lake, and one of them is for the traditional 11.5X LGA 1200. And you'll set up the pump head with either AMD hardware, which latches onto your standard AM4 brackets with your motherboard, or the Intel hardware, which will mount to the standoffs mating to those brackets. That'll be on the back of your board. The plates will just slot into the pump head, and you screw them down. The 2-point solutions for AM4 installs aren't optimal, but it works well as long as you make sure both ends are evenly and very firmly tightened down. For square CPU sockets like LGA 11.5X, just place the head in any orientation that you like. This logo can be rotated. However, for Alder Lake, I think you'll want to line up the two rectangles accordingly just because of the shape, and that'll have the tubing exit either on the RAM side or the IO shield side. A small tube of Cooler Master's Master Gel Pro thermal paste is also included, and that's what I use for the thermal testing. Although in my opinion, it is a little bit on the thicker side, so if you're relying on a 2-point mounting solution like for AM4, you might want to spread the paste out to guarantee even coverage. We'll cover the acoustic performance shortly, but to get an idea of the performance of the unit at 2 noise levels, let's check in to see how this unit stacks up to some other competitors for some in-case thermal testing. And this is with the 3700X overclocked in the NR200, targeting 97 watts in blender, 4.3 gigahertz, and the performance is very, very good. And it's amazingly just a little bit below the Liquid Freezer 2, which has a much thicker radiator. And the Fantex does have the advantage of thick fans plus that thick radiator, but given the PL240's form factor, these fans do appear to be quite good and well matched to Cooler Master's choice of radiator and its design, despite being only a 27mm radiator. And it's outperforming a more dimensionally comparable Acoustic unit like the X53. If we bump the fans up to a louder level at plus 3 dBA over the noise floor, the Flux fans do spin up to 1500 RPM. At that point, it's actually ahead of the LF2, and that's very impressive. At that level, the fans are at a 72% PWM setting, so if you're curious about what the fans and the pump sound like, let's do a quick sound comparison. That pump, you'll hear it slosh a bit when you start up your system, but after that, you can keep it on a curve or just at 100% because you're not going to notice it either way over your rad fans and your case fans. And this is one of the quietest AIO pumps out there, and it's much better than what I've heard from a lot of Acoustic units that do tend to have some clicking at higher RPMs. These fans do have functionality that it'll stop spinning. There's a 0 RPM level, which is somewhere under 20% PWM. Now, I don't necessarily recommend running at that low because I think some airflow is good and you won't hear the fan anyway, but if you're super noise sensitive and you would like that, that is an option. Even at 100%, these fans don't measure in with a heavy noise penalty, and based on the thermal testing, you really don't need to run them that fast for a moderate TDP chip, but the good news is for a hotter CPU or scenarios where you just need to clear more heat, you could, and it wouldn't be the worst noise pattern. One thing I noticed with these fans was a faint rumble at around 60% to 70% PWM. It's not terrible and it's not a whine, but it is there, and if you would be bothered by something like that, I would take note, even though it is quite subtle. Visually, I think the whole unit blends together quite nicely. The pump's lighting is low-key, but still interesting, and you still have these simple rings and logo lighting up, and the fan blades just transmit the LEDs from the center. But I think it's not over the top, and being ARGB, you can customize it to match the rest of your system through your motherboard software. And you've also got the stickers on the fans that give a kind of a holographic effect, so that's kind of neat. So overall, great hard product here. And on the product support side, the warranty term for Cooler Master's AIOs has been on the shorter side. For this one, Cooler Master actually increased the warranty coverage to 5 years, which now matches that on Corsair units, and it just trails NZXT by year, and I think that's a really improved term that most users will appreciate. So here's the elephant in the room, and for my testing, it's a great cooler, great performance, flexible form factor, it's easy to install, but the price, from what I'm told, this is gonna come in at what I would consider a steep price point for an AIO. $190 US is the MSRP for the 240 and $210 for the 360, and I think that might give some folks pause. To put that into context, the Fantex Glacier T30 form factor differences and that weird pump noise issue aside, that's $170, and it comes with two of the best 120mm fans right now. So that makes the Flux easily one of the most expensive AIOs out there right now that doesn't have a fancy screen or display on the pump head. And at that price point, if you don't mind the looks, what I might consider doing is taking the PL240 Illusion, which is about $120, and pair that with two Fantex T30s or Noctua A12x25s, and that will get you top tier performance. You still have that pump noise that's pretty much non-existent, and this comes in at a little lower price point. And you still have two really cool looking case fans to deploy. But nonetheless, I think Cooler Master did a great job with this unit. It's on par with the Low Good Freezer 2, as you've seen, with more flexibility in mounting, right? And you've got this low noise pump. These new fans exceeded my expectations, standard cabling, low height, and this is a biggie. If height clearance over the motherboard is a challenge, such as in a lot of lower volume SFF or sandwich style cases, this is an excellent performing choice, and I really had a hard time picking out any issues with it. This is a complete package here if you can afford it, and it will be available starting January 6th next year. So that will do it for this review. I hope you found that helpful. We'll be checking out another 240 shortly, so give a like, subscribe to get the updates, and thanks for watching today.